So I did something kind of dumb. Welcome back to the Panic Room, everyone, for a different kind of video today. So you might be wondering, Pax, what the hell are you doing? So I had a really strange idea for an experiment. Hit me a number of weeks ago. And it all started because I saw this book mentioned in one of Mr. Morningstar's videos. And beneath that video, Bookbound Weirdo commented about this book, you know, expressing interest in it. And Mr. Morningstar commented back and said, "Aren't you vegan? You would hate this." Now, for those of you who don't know, if you've never watched one of my Pack Snacks videos, I don't consume meat, eggs, milk, dairy products in general. So yes, by every definition, I am a vegan. However, that word gets thrown around in a lot of negative ways, a lot of political ways, so I do tend to just stay away from it. However, I thought, you know, hey, what would happen if someone with my particular values, when it comes to what I consume, was to pick up a book like this and read it? Because I was thinking to myself, you know what, I've been a horror lover for longer than I've been the V word, so how would I react, you know? Now, I'm going to preface this by saying that I went into this knowing that I was probably going to hate it, all right? This was solely to get my reaction, to see what I would think, how I would react, if I would physically react, all of that. This was literally just an experiment on myself. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I read this book a number of weeks ago, and I wanted to give myself time to digest, which is probably the wrong word to use, before I sat down and did this video. Because I hope that nobody clicks on this video thinking that I'm going to shit on other people's views, because I'm not that kind of vegan. I have my personal opinions, my personal views, and I choose to live my life a certain way, and that's where it ends. So again, this was an experiment, nothing more. So let's dive in, shall we? Let's talk about cows. Now, I've already said that I didn't enjoy this, and I will tell you that I did somewhat physically react. There were some chapters where I was nauseous, okay? But I wasn't stupid. I knew going into this that it was going to be a book that had scenes of factory farming in it. I knew it was probably going to have some animal cruelty. And while I don't gravitate towards that, I did, for the sake of my experiment, subject myself to it, again, just to see how would a horror lover who is also a vegan react to a book like this. And you might be saying, well, why? Why would someone do that? Because I was thinking to myself, how many times do you get the chance, as someone who loves horror, to really pick up a book that flies in the face of something that you hold so dear as, say, your dietary choices? And I'm certainly not going to inflict that on someone else to find that out, so I'm going to do it to myself. Now, does that make me dumb? Yeah, it does, because I did not enjoy my experience. And there were a number of chapters that I really thought I was going to puke, because it's disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. However, let's break this down. For me, the book falls into two halves. The first half really takes place in this slummy kind of area, and then of course in this meat packing place that Stephen, our main guy, works in. And so this book is largely almost a disintegration of Stephen as a person into a more beastly or more animalistic type individual. And the book takes place largely in his mind. So you get to see this kind of path that he's taking all the way down into these depths of losing what little shred of humanity he had. And I say that because he really had a bad start in life to begin with, because he has this mother character who has essentially turned him into a flaming agoraphobic. So he was really kind of screwed from the get-go. And the mom, he calls her the hag beast, and I'm not gonna lie, some of the worst scenes involve her. I'm not gonna lie. She is just absolutely revolting. Absolutely disgusting as a character. So, like I said, for me, the book falls in those two places. The first half is really Stephen in this slum, in this apartment with his mom, you know, and working in this meat industry packing place. You'll have to excuse me, I'm not really up on that lingo. To tackle that part first, you know, that was the hardest for me to get through. Because I knew, even though Stephen's job was hurling the carcasses into a grinder, I think, I knew based on the direction the book was going that we were eventually going to go into the slaughter room. And I've watched, you know, vegan documentaries. You know, I'm not an idiot. I know what goes on I don't like it, but I know what goes on. And was I cherishing the idea of reading about the happenings in there? No. But based on the direction the book was going, I knew that was inevitable. And you have this boss character, Cripps, who is almost like, he almost talks about the slaughtering of animals and like what's going on in this meat packing place that Stephen works in, almost in a religious sense. He, to me, was like one of the most evil characters in the whole book, easily. But it was really weird to hear him talk about it in like a religious sense. I was not expecting that in this book. But he really did. He was talking about how, like, you know, the killing of another animal makes you a real man and all this, and I don't know, it was very strange. And I have to say, I was not expecting that take. However, when Stephen does make it into the slaughter room, those were the hard scenes for me, for obvious reasons. And I don't think that that's a shock to anyone, but, you know, they were very inflammatory, I guess, you know, very out there, very extreme, you know, which I knew they would be. Did that make it easier to read knowing that? No. And based on at least one of those scenes, I never want to pick this book up again. I found it absolutely revolting. So, and I feel like I've read some pretty nasty shit, and that's, that really got to me. That really got to me. I have to say, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It really got to me. I came real close to being like, screw this, I failed, this experiment's never gonna happen. But I plowed on because it does interest me. I really did want to see how I would react to the rest of the book. So to me, then the book kind of takes this weird turn. And we start into like what I consider the second half. Because then Stephen starts down this whole thing about like talking cows and shit, which again, I wasn't expecting. We start to really go off the rails with like the storyline, because then you get this whole like underground cow attack group, and it gets real weird real fast. And part of me wonders if it's not like almost allegorical in a lot of ways, with like Stephen losing his mind and becoming more animalistic. However, there is one thing I want to talk about. There was a video I was watching from Violet Prin, actually just a few days before I started this book. And she mentioned something about extreme horror that I think really applies to this book. And I will link her video somewhere here or down below. And she was talking about how one of the big caveats with extreme horror is sometimes you run into authors who get so caught up, and I don't think they do this intentionally. I think sometimes they get so caught up in this idea of wanting to be like the most evil or the most disgusting or the most weird that the story starts to get lost. And I found some of that happening in the second half of Cows. Now, arguably, it was easier for me to get through the second half because we got away from the whole like meat packing, factory farming side of things. But there really were some scenes that didn't seem like they needed to be there. All they were there for was to be like shocking. And I'll give you an example. There was a scene where Stephen and the cows, like, they went to this, what I think sounded to me like a subway station, you know, because they're living underground in these tunnels under the city, so they have access to points like that. And, you know, they cause a lot of carnage and everything, and they're on their way back, and Stephen is actually alone with a female cow. And antics happen. And that's all fine and good, whatever, all right? I've read weirder shit. However, that particular scene, like the one right after the subway, to me that didn't do anything to pull the plot forward at all. And that wasn't the first time that that particular antic had happened, but the other times, as weird as this is to say, it fit with the plot, whereas that particular time, it didn't. It just seemed to be like, hey, let's have some more of this, you know, just so you can see it happening. It just didn't feel like it needed to be there. It seemed like it was just blood-soaked, shit-soaked fluff, if you will. I really think that, and Violet said it a whole lot better in her video. She really did. She was much more eloquent about it than I am. But, you know, I do think that you run the risk with extreme horror to have things like that happen. You know, to just throw things in, to be inflammatory, and the plot get lost. And for a book like Cows, where the plot is taking place, you know, largely up here for our main character, you know, to throw things like that in, I feel like you are running a risk of taking the reader out of the story. You know, because your plot's already kind of wacky and weird and, you know, blood-soaked and gory. You don't need to add more because the story is going to give that to you as you progress, very organically. But that's just me. That's just my particular opinion. I will say that I am not in any way, shape, or form advocating for policing horror. I think this is more of a like editing thing. I think that is one of the best things about horror is that the gates are flung wide open. You know, I said in my first extreme horror review that we have to have authors like this. We have to have books like this, because the very moment that you start saying you can't write about that, then you're just going to start to snowball, and we're just going to have a bunch of blank pages after a while, or we're going to have a bunch of bored readers. Okay, so let me say that. It doesn't matter that I didn't enjoy this. This was an experiment on myself, because I am a horror lover. You know, I like to read horror, both extreme and not, you know, all types of horror, but I also am this inflammatory V word where I am a vegan, and it does bother me, you know, the idea of factory farming or the idea of harming animals for food, you know, things like that. It does get to me. So I wanted to see these two ideologies, these two things that I hold within me kind of collide in a book. And Cal's accomplished that. Do I want to do it again? Hell no. Hell no. Do I feel stupid that I even tried to do this? Yeah, a little. But I thought, you know, maybe there's somebody else out there that might think it's interesting to see, you know, a vegan perspective on a book like this, or should I say a horror-loving vegan perspective on a book like this. I didn't go in thinking I was going to enjoy it, and I didn't. Mr. Morningstar was correct. If you are vegan, you will not enjoy this book. However, you know, I hope I was able to give you at least a little bit of, you know, a reaction that maybe you couldn't get from someone else. But guys, thanks for hanging out for this kind of odd review. I do hope you guys understand why I did it. I didn't do it to shit on anyone else's beliefs. I really did it just to see where I would come out personally and chronicle my reactions for all of you guys, all of my wacky, wonderful weirdos that I love so much. So, but with that, guys, thank you again for hanging out for this review. Please like and subscribe. It would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.